Spoilers ahead. Sit back and enjoy this 2011 blockbuster movie, Colombiana. Welcome to Magician Recaps Explains. The film begins in Bogota, Colombia. Fabio, Jesse Borrego, is speaking to Don Luis Beto Benitez, a drug lord and his boss. Fabio wants to quit. Meanwhile, Don Luis is not happy about the decision, but he pretends everything is fine. When Fabio leaves, Don Luis tells Marco Jordi Mala to shoot Fabio, saying, "No one leaves the cartel." Fabio knows pretty well that Don Luis would attack him, so he makes his mind up to flee. Fabio is leaving the country with his wife, Alicia, Cynthia Day Robinson, and daughter, Cataleya, Amanda Stenberg. He gives Cataleya a microchip and tells her to go to US Embassy, if anything were to go wrong. Shortly, Macro arrives at the house and starts killing Fabio's men. Marco eventually kills Fabio and Alicia. Cataleya is shocked, making her not able to move an inch. Marco tries to deceive her to give out the chip, but she stabbed him in the hand. Cataleya swallows the microchip and swears to kill Don Luis. She escapes, making Marco's men to chase after her, but she lost them by seeking a refuge in a ditch, and somehow manages to reach the US Embassy. She vomits the microchip to her freedom by requesting to be sent to the United States. The microchip has details of all Don's illegal activities and is very valuable for Americans. They take Cataleya to US. In US, she lost the escorts and goes to Chicago to meet her uncle, Emilio, Cliff Curtis. Emilio is Fabio's brother. Cataleya is finally able to let go and cries in her uncle's arms. Cataleya asks Emilio to train her as a killer to avenge Fabio. Emilio enrolls her in the best school in Chicago, but she rebels, saying vividly she wants to be a killer. Emilio demonstrates how dangerous it is to be a killer, as he wants her to learn some basic knowledge to be a smart assassin. Years later, Cataleya, Zoe Saldana, is now grown up and is a trained assassin, very skillful. She accidentally jammed into a station police car, and she's arrested after realizing she is drunk. At the station, they couldn't find any vital identification about her except a library ID. She is sent into a cell. Sometime later that night, the police brings in a prisoner in a mask. Immediately the place becomes calm. She gets up and changes herself. She used a pin to break the cell lock and steps out. She tilts the camera to a blind spot before getting a cup of water from a water dispenser. She goes to the electrical room and sets a trap with the cup of water. She squeezes through the ventilation canal, as the cup of water causes a short electricity outage, making the turbine to stop moving. She luckily passes through before the light comes back. She manages to shoot a guarded prisoner, her target, inside a prison, while framing the prison guard, and also while being under arrest and in a log cell herself in the women's section of the prison. The alarm is triggered to alert the murder of the prisoner. The police station is locked down not before Cataleya is released. Cataleya heads to the apartment of Danny, Michael Vartan, a painter and her quasi-boyfriend. Danny knows little about her, and only knows her as Jennifer. Danny and Cataleya have sex. FBI Special Agent Ross Lenny James comes to the jail and realizes the victim is the latest of a string of murders they have been tracking for the past 4 years, 22 in all. They call the perpetrator the tag killer due to the markings the killer leaves on the chest. It is the Cataleya flower. CIA agent Richard Callum Blue travels to New Orleans to a heavily guarded villa. It is the home of Don Luis, who was brought to US by CIA in exchange for info. Richard shows him the hit from the jail cells, but Luis denies he had anything to do with it. Luis suspects Cataleya to be behind the killings and asks Marco to handle it. Ross holds a meeting about the tag killer and their numerous victims. He concludes that one of the people in the jail killed the target, and they need to find out who. Meanwhile, Cataleya goes to see Emilio. He shows her the paper with her calling card. He is livid. A hedge manager created a Ponzi scheme and stole billions and fled the country. People want him dead. That's her next target. She won't stop till Luis is dead. Ross is at the FBI office, going over security footage. Some of his agents think the killer is Cataleya, but he cannot believe a woman would be this type of killer. In Mexico, mansion of the hedge manager who lives in opulence, surrounded by stunning women. He also has an aquarium of sharks. He tells his guards he's bringing an extra set of guards, just to keep the place tight. Soon, the extra guards arrive. Meanwhile, Cataleya is hiding under their van. Cataleya swims through the aquarium and pushes up a glass cover to enter the mansion. The hedge fund manager gets up and notices Cataleya wrote on him, "Thief," and the flower design. He walks around his mansion and notices all his guards are dead. He tries to shoot her, but there's no bullet in the guns. Cataleya shoots him in the legs. The man pleads with her to not kill him. Cataleya shoots him in the chest, and he falls into the open pool. The blood flows, and his sharks eat him alive in seconds. Ross is looking at the tag killer calling card, when the mailman gives him a vital clue. It is the Cataleya flower that only grows in Colombia. Ross tries to tie it to open cases in Colombia but is denied access due to CIA jurisdiction. Ross calls Richard and asks for clearance, but Richard dodges the issue. He puts pressure on Luis to resolve the issue. Macro resorts to door-to-door search in Chicago to find Cataleya. Danny and Cataleya have sex. He takes a picture of her with his iPhone. Danny tries to get close to Cataleya, but she is afraid that he will get hurt. Cataleya meets with Emilio. He is livid, having seen the paper. Cataleya has not stopped with her calling card. People are looking for them, showing that 8 people were gunned down in a bar, one being a friend of Emilio. "You're retired," Emilio tells her. Cataleya refuses to give up. Danny shows Cataleya a photo to a friend, who calls his sister-in-law, who is a cop, to check if Cataleya or Jennifer is legit. When Danny is distracted, he sends the photo to the cop. Ross is at his computer when it is pinged with Cataleya's photo. He traces the signal to the other police station. Ross compares the photo to the security footage at the jail, and it's a match. Cataleya is the woman who he is looking for. He quickly finds her location and makes a call. Meanwhile, Emilio is being monitored by Marco. Later that day, Danny mentions the photo to Cataleya and she immediately leaves the apartment. SWAT team are already outside. Cataleya manages to escape by grabbing her weapons and bomb a side wall of her apartment. She escaped to the garage where she shoots the cameras, alerting the police where she is. She finally escaped via a planned escape route. She heads to Emilio and finds the whole family being murdered, and later find Emilio tortured and dead. She breaks down in tears. At the station, Ross is more concerned about arresting Cataleya. Sometime later, he goes home. Meanwhile, Cataleya meets Ross at his apartment and holds him at a gunpoint. She trapped him and tells him about Don Luis killing her parents and the police doing nothing about it. Cataleya shows him the bodies of Emilio and the other family members that were killed. But Ross said he can't help her, and she threatens him. She asks him to approach Richard for the info on Don Luis. Ross has to agree as Cataleya promises to kill his family if he doesn't comply. At Richard's office, Ross asks for Don Luis' location, but Richard refuses, and Cataleya fires shots at him. When Ross is meeting him, Richard gives Ross the address for Don Luis. Ross leaves. Cataleya goes to Pepe's garage. He was Emilio's trusted friend and was killed by Marco. She grabs some guns. She sees the 2 dogs and takes them along. Marco and his men are also being prepared to face Cataleya, with Marco saying she is very dangerous, so they should be alert anytime soon. Suddenly, Cataleya attacks Don's home with a missile. Don Luis passed out for a while, and Marco helps him out to escape. Marco's men attempt to move in a vehicle to attack, but Cataleya smashes into their car with a firefighter truck. She kills all the men. Marco hides Don Luis and tells him to wait on his call. Cataleya kills all their men and faces Marco in hand-to-hand combat. After exchanging of so many blows, she eventually kills him by stabbing him in the neck. Don Luis tries to escape in a van when Cataleya calls him from Marco's phone. He tells her she can never find him. Don Luis threatens to find and kill her, not knowing she had put Pepe's dogs in the van, and now tells them eat. The trained dogs proceed to eat Don Luis. Danny was taken into custody by Ross and the FBI. Danny knows little and tells them so. Ross says while he is not under arrest, he still has questions to answer. Danny asks for coffee and Ross goes to get it. Danny gets a call from Cataleya. She tells him she's okay and they have 40 seconds before they trace the call, so that's enough time to ask 3 questions. He asks for her real name, and she tells him it's Cataleya. Danny asks if his little bird will return one day, meaning her. Cataleya tells him that maybe one day she can. Danny has only seconds now. "I love you," Danny says, which makes Cataleya tear up. Ross orders him to give over the phone, but Cataleya hangs up before he can get anything from her. Ross stares at the phone and tells Danny he's free to go. Cataleya puts her sunglasses on and gets on a bus for a destination unknown. Hope you enjoyed this movie. Why don't you hit the subscribe and like buttons to get more interesting movies on our channel?